Do you want to level up your paintings, your portrait art, and in particular your artworks, and avoid the mistakes that slows a lot of artists down? In this video, you'll see the process of me creating this gouache portrait of the tennis legend of Roger Federer. But more importantly, you'll pick up and learn techniques, shortcuts, and tips throughout this entire video that can really level up your own art. Let's dive in.
Drawing the portrait's foundations and structure. Alright, so let's begin with the drawing. Before I touch any paint, always set up a Photoshop file that matches the exact dimensions of my final canvas. In this example, my canvas was roughly 20 by 30 centimeters. Then I overlay a grid and I do the same grid setup on my actual paper or canvas in this example. This is tip number 1 right off the bat. Use grids to break down your image into manageable chunks. It helps maintain proportion and placement as you sketch. You'll notice I'm building the drawing slowly, lightly placing the major lines and features. It's not about detailing or perfection at this stage. It's about getting the structure and the foundations in place first. And if you're learning portraits, don't rush this part. Just take your time. And if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the Portrait Guru for any future videos, and also comment me below with how you got on with your own portrait drawings. To make it even easier, I often flip the portrait upside down when I sketch. This is a trick I use a lot. Flipping the image forces your brain to stop relying on the symbols and really observe what's in front of you. Now the structure and the foundations are in place, it's now time to move on to the fun part, and that is painting the canvas. Let's take a moment to talk about the tools and materials I'm using, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. The tools and mediums I use to paint with. I'm using a mixture of this Gouache Studio set, which is great for bold colors and underpainting, and I've used this throughout my paintings for a number of years. For brushes, I'm mostly synthetic round brushes. I really do recommend the Winsor & Newton Series 7 brushes. They are fantastic. Always use a ceramic palette as well. It's just really smooth and easy to mix from. Painting a canvas portrait painting. I start with a warm pinkish undercoat to knock out the white of the canvas. This also helps unify skin tones later and adds a warmth to the entire painting, so I'm not just painting on pure white. I keep my palette super simple here. I'm just focusing on 5 colors, so the yellow, the black, the white, the red, a bit of orange, and also a little bit of brown. This helps prevent muddy colors and forces me to think about value, not just the hue. And here's another tip. Paint in big shapes first. Don't just get lost in the eyes or the lips just yet. You'll see blocking in shadows and major light areas before I touch any of the details. This is where I'm sculpting the form with light and dark values. I'm not thinking about face. I'm not thinking about the nose or how the eyes look. I'm just thinking in planes, volumes, and how light wraps around the structure. Instead of just drawing features, learn to see the planes of face. Use references like the Loomis head. They break down the face into geometric planes, which makes lighting and shading much easier. A great way to train your eye is to convert the photo reference into a black and white photo. This helps you focus purely on the value and not the color, and understand how light works. So here's another tip. Try sketching your reference in only 3 values: shadow, midtone, and light. That discipline forces you to simplify and see the portrait in a more structural way. Try placing boxes within your sketchbook paper and breaking it down to just using 3 or 4 tones per box. How many different boxes can you make with just these 3 or 4 tones? So once the underpainting is dry, I move on to layering. This is one of the gouache's biggest strengths. You can layer over dry paint and build form gradually. As I start refining the features like the eyes, the mouth and also the nose, I start adjusting the contrast. This is where the likeness really begins to emerge. I would definitely recommend you use small brushes only after the structure is completely solid. Going in too early with the detail can throw off your proportions you worked so hard to build. You'll notice I'm blending everything smoothly. That's intentional. Keeping some visible brush strokes adds life and texture, so don't be afraid to leave it a little bit raw in some places. I do regularly talk about this on my channel, but it's really important that you try and get some inspiration, get some influences and learn from the greats. Maybe that's Van Gogh, maybe that's Monet, anyone that you really, really love. Study their work and really try and feed it in to your own art style. Don't just copy, study in them and also take influence from them as well. I'm actually taking a lot of inspiration from Caravaggio and other artists like him who used dark backgrounds and put a light figure or subject on top of these dark backgrounds. And I'm doing the same within this painting, just so the figure of Roger really pops out. With gouache, there's always certain challenges. If you paint over an area before it's dry, you might lift the paint underneath and actually create kind of muddy, unwelcome spots. So to avoid this, let the layers dry completely. Make sure you load your brush with the paint and don't use it too watery. That is the major problem. I think it's always better, in my own personal recommendation, to actually overload your brush with the paint, as if you use it too watery, it can really become quite messy. Always try and use the least amount of brush strokes as possible. And then also, gouache dries lighter when it's wet. So if your shadows feel weak after drying, just glaze another layer on top. I also darken the background now. This pushes the figure forwards and helps your focal point pop. I use the dry brush technique around the cheek and the jaw for subtle transitions. That textured look feels more natural than over blending everything. So here I'm tracking proportions, contrast and edges. I step back often and see how the painting looks from a distance. If it reads well from a few feet away, let's wrap up some of the key takeaways from this portrait process that you can take away to improve your own portrait drawings and painting game. Use grids and upside down drawing to improve your accuracy. Keep your gouache palette limited and try and use a ceramic palette. Keep a piece of kitchen towel nearby and make sure you replace your water from your painting pot regularly. And always clean your brushes after using them. Don't just leave them in the painting pot either, and definitely try and clean them as much as possible and use a little bit of soap as well. This is how you can ruin paintbrushes. So just always make sure that you clean your palette after you finish painting and get into the habit of always cleaning your brushes. Paint the big shapes first and then refine. Study the values, not the colors. Let your layers dry fully to avoid lifting. Use dry brush and mixed media for final texture and also that extra pop. You don't just have to use paint. If you want to use mixed media, if you want to experiment, if you want to go outside the box, do that. Do whatever you fancy. Focus on learning, progression, and not perfection. Every painting always has a stage where you struggle. And in this particular one, it wasn't too bad. I didn't really find a lot to struggle with. But there's been definitely times in the past when I've been painting is when I felt like I wanted to just throw the canvas out of the window. But this is where I've learned the most. So just embrace the learning and embrace the mistakes as well. You will get better. Here's a few common mistakes with gouache and how you can fix them. So overblending. So don't kill all your strokes. Let some edges stay sharp. Lose some edges. Contrast is your friend. Using too much water. I know I touched on it earlier, but I really want to stress it. Gouache is not watercolor, unless you're treating gouache as watercolor. But in this instance, we're not. Use water sparingly, unless you're doing a wash, like at the start of my process with the underpainting. Let the layers dry. So patience makes for better portraits. So take breaks after certain stages of your painting. And also gouache dries pretty fast, so take advantage of that. Using too many colors, so limit your palette. Fewer colors equals more harmony and a better control. And then finally, gouache's properties is very much like acrylic, so it's fast drying. And also because it's like oils, as you can work back into any painting. Adding details to the portrait and the tools I use. Once the painting is solid, I bring in mixed media for the final details. You'll see me using oil-based pencils for hair texture, soft pastels to add warmth to the skin, and then brush pens and fine liners for accents around the eyes, edges, and also the clothing. These tools add a certain crispness and contrast that gouache alone can't always deliver, especially for those sharp edges and also tiny highlights. It's not about adding for the sake of it. It's about enhancing the form and making the artwork feel even more alive. And this is the fun part of any painting and also canvas painting. It's adding those final touches that really puts it to another level. So if you're using mixed media to push your values, for example, I'll use a white pastel or a Posca pen for the brightest highlights in the eyes, for example, and a black brush pen for the deepest shadows. Try and be as subtle as you can within this stage, as you don't want to ruin all the great work that the painting has done so far. So just be subtle. This brings an energy and a depth to the final result. This process taught me a lot, and I hope it's given you the tools and ideas to explore in your own work. If you try painting with gouache after watching this, or even do a portrait of your own person, it usually means the structure is working, and if I can't add anything more to the painting, that pretty much means that this painting is finished. And here's the final piece.
Hopefully seeing my own process and also tips along the way, giving you some ideas of what you can do within your own artwork. And comment me below with what you create next in the comments section. Remember, it's fine to make mistakes, it's great to learn, but most importantly, be consistent. Try to commit 10 minutes, 30 minutes to an hour a day if you can, and you'll see big results in your art, your portraits, and also your drawings. If you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to the Portrait Guru so you don't miss any future videos, and comment me below with what art you create next. And if you enjoyed this video, I recommend you check out this video coming up. Thanks guys, and see you on the next video.